There is a fruit growing along fence lines, roadside ditches, and the edges of old fields right now, one that tastes the way you would imagine apple and honey would taste if you combine them. And almost no one who walks past it knows what it is. You have probably seen it. You have almost certainly ignored it. It does not look like food. It looks like something a bird planted by accident in a hedgerow, a shrubby thing with small clustered fruit and leaves that give nothing away from a distance. Most of it falls to the ground uncollected. The deer eat what is left. The people who planted expensive apple trees in their backyards, the people who bought spray schedules and grafted rootstock and dwarf varieties that still barely produce, drive past it on their way home from the nursery. The plant is the autumn olive. Its Latin name is Elaeagnus umbellata. Umbellata means clustered, which describes exactly how the fruit grows, in dense drooping clusters along the branch like red beads on a string. Before I go any further, I want to say something clearly. This plant has been misunderstood in a way that has cost a lot of home growers a very good harvest. Now, the identification, and there is something important here most people get backwards. The first thing you need to know about the autumn olive is what it looks like up close, because from a distance it is easy to dismiss. The leaves are narrow, slightly lance-shaped, with a silvery green underside that catches the light in a particular way, almost metallic when the wind turns them. That silver underside is your first confirmation. No true toxic look-alike shares it. The bark on young wood is smooth and reddish-brown. The fruit clusters tightly along the branch rather than hanging in isolated pairs, and each small fruit, roughly the size of a large rosehip, is red to dark red at full ripeness, with tiny silver speckles on the skin. Those speckles are another confirmation marker. They do not appear on the lookalikes. There is one plant that causes confusion, the Russian olive, Elaeagnus angustifolia. It is in the same family. It is not toxic. The fruit is mealy, dry, starchy, not unpleasant, but nowhere near the same eating quality. You can tell them apart by the fruit color at ripeness. Russian olive goes deep red. Leaf shape is also slightly different. The Russian olive leaf is longer and more slender. Once you have stood next to both plants and held a cluster of each in your hand, you will not confuse them again. The flavor of a fully ripe autumn olive is genuinely surprising the first time. The sugars are high, higher than most domesticated fruits at full ripeness. Research on the fruit has found lycopene levels many times higher than raw tomatoes. Lycopene is the pigment compound also found in tomatoes, and the concentration here is among the highest measured in any commonly available fruit. The taste itself is floral, sweet, and slightly tart in the back of the palate. The apple comparison is real, not marketing language. The honey quality comes from a faint floral note in the aroma that concentrates when the fruit is warm from the sun. Pick a cluster in late September or early October, after the first hint of cool nights, and eat one off the branch. That is the flavor you want. Week on this channel, one honest fix for your home and your yard. 30 years of methods, tested by hand, nothing sold to you. If that is useful to you, subscribe, and the next one will find you. Now the history, and this is where the story gets strange. The autumn olive was deliberately introduced to the eastern United States in the 1830s as an ornamental plant and wildlife habitat shrub. By the mid-20th century, the Soil Conservation Service, the federal agency responsible for erosion control at the time, was actively recommending it for reclamation plantings on stripped coal mine land, highway embankments, and disturbed soil. It worked perfectly, too perfectly. By the 1990s, it had naturalized so thoroughly across the eastern half of the country that land managers began listing it as invasive. The label stuck. Extension offices that had once handed out seedlings started recommending eradication. The edible value was quietly dropped from the conversation. What was never explained clearly to homegrowers is that invasive status describes ecological spread in unmanaged wild land, not the plant's behavior in a managed garden bed. A plant growing in your raised bed or backyard orchard is not spreading itself to the forest on its own. The fruit only travels if a bird carries it, and thorough harvesting sharply reduces that risk, though it does not eliminate it entirely. Pick the branches clean, and you have done the responsible version of growing this plant. My father in Nagano grew a related Elaeagnus along the south-facing wall of our kitchen garden. The species was Elaeagnus multiflora. Goumi, in English a close relative to autumn olive, slightly larger fruited, with the same silver-speckled skin. He called the harvest window the week of the red curtain, because the branches hung so heavy with fruit they formed a wall of color along the stone wall. The method he used for establishing new plants was simple. A hardwood cutting taken in late autumn, the cut end dipped in willow water, plain water in which willow branches had soaked for 48 hours. Pressed into moist soil, he lost almost none of them. Total cost, nothing. Time from cutting to first fruit, 2 to 3 years. Tell me this. Have you found autumn olive growing near you, or do you grow something else along your fence line that produces reliably? Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. Autumn olive responds the same way. A hardwood cutting taken in October or November, between 15 and 20 centimeters long. From a healthy branch of the current year's growth, press it into a container of mixed compost and sand, keep it barely moist through winter in a sheltered spot, and by spring you will have roots. Transplant it the following autumn to its permanent position. It tolerates poor soil, low rainfall, partial shade, and hard frost. It fixes its own nitrogen. Nitrogen fixation means the roots host bacteria that pull nitrogen gas directly from the air and deposit it as a usable compound in the soil around them. You do not feed it. It feeds itself and improves the ground around it. Same as the Goumi. Total cost is nothing beyond what is already in your yard, and you can expect the first fruit in 2 to 3 years. There is one honest limit here. This will not turn fruit picked before it is ready into something worth eating. An underripe autumn olive is dry and puckering, nothing like the flavor I described, and it will not taste the same in every location. Soil, rainfall, and how late in the season you pick all shift the sweetness. Taste one before you commit to a full harvest. Now 4 safety points, and I will not skip them. First, the fruit stains. Hands, cloth, light-colored surfaces. The lycopene pigment is persistent. Work over a surface you do not mind marking, and rinse your hands before it dries. Second, the fruit is high in lycopene and natural sugars. Eaten in large quantity, more than a cup at a sitting, especially for children, it can cause digestive upset. Start small. That is not a reason to avoid it. That is a reason to treat it the way you would any unfamiliar fruit. Third, rules vary significantly by state. Some restrict planting, selling, or moving this species even in a home garden, not only on unmanaged land. Check your own state's noxious weed list before you plant. 1. Not after. Fourth, and most important, if you cannot check every marker I just gave you against a second source, a regional foraging guide, your state extension office's plant ID page, or an experienced forager in person, do not eat it. Confirm the silver speckles, the silver leaf underside, and the deep red color, all 3, against something other than this video. If any one of them is missing, or you are not certain, walk away and leave it for the birds. That is not caution for its own sake. That is how this is done safely, every time. Now for what to do with the harvest, because this is where most guides stop too soon. The raw fruit is good eaten straight from the branch, but the real value is in processing. A simple syrup made from autumn olive requires nothing beyond the fruit, water, and a fine mesh strainer. Simmer 1 part fruit to 1 part water until the skins split, roughly 10 minutes. Strain out the seeds and skins, and return the liquid to low heat with a small amount of honey to your taste. The result is a deep red syrup with a flavor closer to a quality rosehip concentrate than anything you can buy at the grocery store. A half-liter jar of comparable artisan syrup would cost you between $12 and $18 at a specialty market. Autumn olive version costs the time it takes to walk the fence line and about 20 minutes at the stove. That is the syrup you want. The fruit dries well at low heat. Spread the clusters on a screen and dry at around 50 degrees Celsius for 6 to 8 hours. The result is a tart, chewy dried fruit that stores for months in a sealed jar. Replaces dried cranberry in baking with a more complex, less sugary flavor. Yuki uses it in a pressed barley salad she makes in early winter when the garden is mostly done. The dried fruit reconstitutes slightly in the dressing, and the color in the bowl is something I have never seen her apologize for making again. I have learned not to argue. The jam follows the same ratio as any berry preserve. Equal parts fruit pulp to sugar, cooked until set in under an hour. In jars you already have on the shelf. The seeds must be strained out. They are small and numerous, but the pulp is smooth and rich. One autumn olive bush in a good year will produce enough fruit to fill 8 to 10 pint jars. That is a full season of preserves from a plant that costs nothing to grow and asks nothing in return. Deep red skin, silver speckles, gives under the thumb. That is the autumn olive you want. Walk away from anything that is not that. The extension system labeled this plant a problem because it spread into land no one was managing. It grows without your help, improves your soil, it tastes like something you would pay for, and it is almost certainly within a short walk of where you are standing right now. That is the plant you want. Next time, I am going to show you how to make a rooting solution from willow bark that costs nothing and works on nearly every cutting you will ever take in this garden. It is the natural next step after this video. Until then, take a hardwood cutting before the ground freezes, press it into moist soil, and remember, the right answer is usually cheaper, simpler, and older than the thing being sold to you.